So much for coming out tonight. It is so exciting to see human faces, bodies, arms, legs, shirts, pants, because everybody is the only thing is everybody's the same height on Zoom, which I prefer at 5'2", you know, or at least that's what I used
Just
to
a
be.
field of cabbage heads.
Exactly. But this is way better. Thank you all for coming again. I'm Ricky Papa, I'm the chair of LexCAN. In the audience today, we have many of our board members, and I would like them to stand up. So we have Lisbeth Bornhoft, Charlie Moore, Mary Yardley, right back there, and Janice Litwin. Marcia Jens, our other board member, was not able to, Fran Ludwig. You all know Fran. The LexCAN board has been, LexCAN's been together, I like your t-shirt, has been together since 2005, thinking and talking and worrying about climate change. We took the summer off this year, so we didn't have any activities, but that doesn't mean climate change took the summer off. As we all know, it's been a terrible summer. I read a book this summer that was written in 2018. It's called The Uninhabitable Earth, and it was predicting things like, 10, 15 years from now that were happening at the time. It was pretty discouraging. Excessive heat, flooding, drought, fires, everywhere we looked there was something happening that was causing a lot of damage and loss of life. And that is because we keep putting fossil fuels into the air. We keep burning creating CO2 and methane and particulate matter, and all of these things are causing climate change, and we all know it, and we all are concerned. Today, I read a couple quotes in some of the articles I get. Climate change is pushing millions of people into famine. In recent months, urgent warnings have become lethal realities, again and again around the world. We do not need more warnings. The dystopian future is already here. We need urgent action now. And then, parts of the world have already grown too hot for human survival. Even more areas will face such conditions as the planet continues to warm from fossil fuel combustion. We must stop burning things. So what is the antidote? What can we all do? We need to stop burning things. And we can all do that in our own home, in our life, and we can make all these choices. And that's what tonight is about. It's about thinking, I was just talking to somebody in the audience who has a room that needs heat and needs to be better heated, so they want to put a heat pump in. What a great way to start. Thank you very much for sharing your situation. And I think many of us are in the same place. Some of us were early adopters, some of us are thinking about doing it this year, some people are thinking about doing it in 5 years. It's just something we all are going to need to do, and this is going to happen all over the planet. So we are, and we can be early adopters too. Lexington has always been at the forefront of making some of these decisions. I'm happy to announce that in the past few years, the town of Lexington has made some amazing decisions to get off of fossil fuels. All of our municipal buildings are being built either net zero, without fossil fuels. That new big police station will be called, I don't know what else to call it, but it is, I know it looks very large, but it will be heated completely by electricity. It will have solar panels that will make it a nearly, if not net zero building. It will have chargers so that the police, as they start to buy electric cars, Lexington is looking to the future, and that's what we want to get everyone on board to do. So, other actions you can take. By the way, there's plenty of actions you can do besides the 4 actions you'll hear about tonight. And we have a toolkit called the LexCAN Toolkit, which will talk about composting and buying naked fruit, so instead of buying it in plastic, you buy it. And if you buy something that's not in plastic, tell the person who's selling it, thank you. Thank you for not putting this lettuce in a piece of plastic. Another action that's coming up, and I don't know if anybody here is thinking of going to the march in New York. Anybody here going to New York? Great. There's a march on next Sunday. Last time that march happened, which was I think 2017, is that when Isla was born, Fran?
Yeah.
There were 311,000 people in the streets of New York. It was amazing. I'm hoping for 500,000 this year. So the way LexCAN is working this year is we've created a partnership with Maggie Peard and she's our Sustainability and Resilience Officer, and Andy Joynt, who was hired through a massive grant as our CleanHeat outreach specialist. And we are attempting to help people be able to transition off of fossil fuels. And I will introduce them. They will start in 1 second with their presentation. The other thing I wanted to notice that the town has done is we've adopted a building code. It's called a specialized building code. And we're trying to be a fossil fuel-free pilot town, which will mean all of our new buildings will be fossil fuel-free. Any new construction will have to be fossil fuel-free. If it chooses to have some fossil fuels, it will have to be completely ready to be fossil fuel-free. So that's a very exciting step for the town, and we should applaud him. So please welcome Maggie Peard and Andy Joynt to tell you about this LexElectrify. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. First off, huge thank you to LexCAN. It is great organizing events with them. They are such a mighty team that really get things done. So always fun to work with them. Also, thank you all for coming, whether you're here to share information with your neighbors or learn something new or eat tasty snacks. We're glad that you are here. LexElectrify is really a team effort brought together from the town of Lexington, LexCAN, and Andy in his role as our CleanHeat outreach specialist. Essentially, it's kind of an umbrella initiative that brings together all of the local, state, and federal resources that are available to individuals to take action towards electrification and energy efficiency. The goal of the program is really to give Lexington residents the inspiration, the tools, the information they need to take action. And we really hope that this campaign will really catalyze individual action to help the town make real, tangible progress towards our pretty ambitious goal of achieving net zero emissions by 2050 or sooner. So during this presentation, we're going to cover a lot of information that I'm sure will prompt questions. We're going to ask that you hold questions till the end because there also will be a lot of time afterwards to mingle and get some questions answered, especially with kind of specific questions to your own situation. So with that, of the agenda.
Sure, so the agenda for today, we're going to spend a few moments talking about the changing climate, the climate risk we all face today, before touching on the transition to clean electricity, which is going to be a key aspect that's working in tandem with the final agenda item, which is the bulk of the presentation today, is what action can we take in our own lives to electrify the infrastructure that we use in our homes and for transportation. So we'll be touching on some of the main actions that we can take as individuals.
So while there are many benefits of electrification, which we'll touch on tonight, the real motivation to start LexElectrify, it has been the climate crisis. Unfortunately, there's no shortage of headlines I could have chosen for this slide, whether that's highlighting recent heat records or floods, wildfires. They've all really become far too commonplace. You don't need to look far to see them. And so I think even for those of us who think about climate change every day, kind of the frequency and severity, especially this summer, has been just an unignorable wake-up call that action needs to be pretty urgent at this point. And climate change isn't something that's just affecting other areas of the globe. It's happening in Lexington too. So just a couple of stats here. By 2050, Middlesex County is expected to have 23 days over 90 degrees each year. That's up from 5 between the period of 2017 and 2021. Boston's is expected to see 20 inches of sea level rise by 2050, and we're expected to see 9% increase of precipitation by 2050. And kind of more notably there is that it's expected to come in much shorter, strong bursts, so much more severe storms that's leading to flooding and more damaged infrastructure. So I say all of this not to intensify climate doom, which I'm sure all of you suffer from, but highlight the need to really be part of the solution, because I think I find really uplifting is the solutions are there, we know what needs to be done, and so we just kind of need to accelerate the pace at which we're doing that. So hopefully some of this presentation will help you with that. So most of this presentation is focused on electrification, but you really can't touch on electrification without thinking about the source of your electricity. You often hear the argument that what's the point of electrifying my systems, my transportation or home heating systems if it's coming from a grid that is powered by fossil fuels. And so just a couple key points to kind of counter that argument. First is the Massachusetts electricity grid in general is mandated to get cleaner every year. So we have a renewable portfolio standard, it's called, and a clean energy standard that is increasing the percentage of renewable energy that's feeding the grid each year. So that's already underway and is mandated to happen. Second is in Lexington, we have a community choice electricity aggregation program that offers residents 100% renewable energy already. So this is probably the easiest action you will hear tonight. If you are not enrolled in the town program, let me know if you're not sure if you are, and we can make sure that you get enrolled. And also opting up to the New England green option is an easy ask as well. The default is this 100% green, but if you switch to New England green, you're driving more demand for local projects in New England, so increasing the amount of renewable energy in New England.
So now we can transition into what we can do in our own lives, and as Maggie is describing, we have this ability to really get clean, green electricity into our homes, and increasingly so for Massachusetts state as a whole. So we've got an opportunity to take action within the infrastructure in our own homes to get off of fossil fuels and to electrify the machines that we operate within our home. And I just want to touch for a moment on what I think is a common impediment that folks feel when they think about taking action on their own, which is this feeling that what can I do that's really going to have an impact? Isn't my individual action just a small drop in the bucket of what Lexington needs to do, of what Massachusetts needs to do, of what we need to do globally? And so I just want to focus for a moment. There's a lot of folks in this room that are not from Lexington that are working on similar efforts. There are campaigns going on in towns all across Massachusetts. I'll just flag a couple of them here on the bottom just to show you the sort of range you have here. This is Newton's campaign for our future, and we piggybacked on a lot of their efforts in developing the LexElectrify campaign. At the Massachusetts state level, Heat Smart Alliance does a lot of great work in helping educate folks on clean heating and cooling options. And then at the federal level, Rewiring America is a federal program which has a goal of electrifying the infrastructure in this country. So it really will be a team effort that it'll take to do this. So when you're taking individual action, you should think about all the others that are likewise taking action at the same time. So a lot of this presentation is going to focus on buildings, on residential buildings in particular. So why are we focusing so much on buildings? When Maggie was developing the climate action plan for the town, we engaged a consultant group, KLA, who performed an in-depth GHG emissions inventory. What are the sources of GHG emissions from Lexington? And we have 2019 as the base year for this. And it turns out 73% of our GHG emissions are coming from the building sector. This is not just residential, this is commercial as well. And we're fortunate to have Maggie working on lots of efforts to help green the commercial building sector as well. And that's that darker yellow is the commercial sources. And then the lighter yellow is residential sources of GHG emissions. And what KLA helped us develop for part of the Climate Action and Resilience Plan is this path toward getting to net zero. And so that's a lot of the actions we're going to be talking about today, is what we can do to to convert our residential sources of GHG emissions, which oftentimes is our heating sources, but there's other ways we contribute to emissions in our own homes, such as heating hot water, and the steps we can take to really reduce that impact and ultimately get down to zero. So what's the first step? Oftentimes people who are new to this are wondering, what can I do? What's my first step? And the sort of obvious one that I think folks should think about is starting with weatherization. When you're thinking about your home as sort of an envelope, you want to have that a nice tight envelope so that you're not just heating and cooling your home and letting all that heat or cold air escape out of your building. So you want to make sure that your insulation is up to snuff and that your home is properly sealed so you don't have drafts coming through. And there's a lot of benefits to doing so, from health benefits to savings, just operating your equipment more efficiently. And if you don't have to operate that equipment as often, you're going to have a reduction in your carbon footprint as well from not burning fossil fuels. I'm going to take a quick tangent here because I don't want to assume any level of technological savvy in the audience. And in the forthcoming slides, we're going to have a lot of QR codes. So I will not be mad if people take out their phones during the presentation. So just to make sure folks are aware, our QR codes save. Scanning a QR code and clicking on it is effectively the same thing as clicking on a website. It doesn't take any personal information off of your phone, so you can feel confident that you can scan a QR code with the same level of scrutiny that you would if you were deciding to click on a website. So if it looks sketchy, like a website, don't click on it, don't scan it with your QR code. The QR codes that we're going to be showing up here today take you to websites that have tremendous resources available, so I encourage you, if you see any, to go ahead and scan them. In order to use a QR code, you simply open up the camera on your phone, you align your camera to the code and hold it nice and steady, and a prompt will automatically appear on your phone. You can just go ahead and tap that prompt and it'll open up a website. So we'll see that on the next slide.
And we'll also be circulating the slides, so you don't need to take pictures of all of it or QR codes of all of it.
Okay, so here's some right now. So a great place for anyone to start is the MassSave website. So MassSave provides a lot of informative resources on how to take a lot of the steps that we're taking today. And the first one I want to start with is utilizing MassSave as a way to access home performance contractors, or HPCs. MassSave has a database that you can search by your zip code that will give you a list of home performance contractors that you can call up, and they will come to your house and they'll give you a free home energy assessment. Zero cost to you. You can do a home energy assessment once every 3 years at zero cost. When they come to your home, they're going to walk through your entire house. They spend a lot of time in the attic and the basement. They're going to be looking at the infrastructure of your home, how you heat and cool your home, the level of insulation that you have, and then they'll provide you with a report that will give their recommendations on what steps you can take to improve the efficiency of your home, and ideas for how you can convert to other forms of heating and cooling. And HomeWorks is one such home performance contractor. We use them a lot in Lexington. We partner with them. So you can feel free to use HomeWorks if you want, but there are many HPCs out there. And if you go to the MassSave website, you can find a number of them. So you're thinking about weatherizing your home, we know that there's a lot of incentives out there, but for beginners, it can be kind of hard to access these. There's MassSave rebates, there's federal tax credits, there's options for financing at zero interest, so you can reduce the amount of upfront costs. And we know there's operational savings that you'll get by doing so. So we want to walk through some real life example of what that might look like, and I'll also just say what we're presenting, here on these slides, these incentives that are available. Maggie, myself, and lots of folks in this room, and the Lexington Heat Smart team that Maggie will be talking about later. We are also resources that are available to folks if you have any questions about these incentives, these rebate programs. We'd love to help you to access this in your own lives. So here's an example of, let's say, a seasoned colonial home, a 2,000 square foot home that maybe has older insulation, and you want to consider doing a retrofit to your insulation. So the first thing you do is contact an HPC, have them come in and do a home energy assessment. That's a zero cost item for you to do. And they'll come back and they'll say something like, we think you can upgrade your insulation, and the cost pre-incentives is going to be $3,500. MassSave offers a rebate starting at 75% for qualifying improvements. And so right off the bat through MassSave, you're going to get $2,625 off of that upfront cost. So right there, your out-of-pocket cost drops to $875. When you then go to file your tax return at the end of the year, there's a federal tax credit available as well, 30% credit on that post-rebate cost. So that's about 260 some odd dollars on that total cost. That is a direct reduction to the amount that you owe the federal government. So take those two in combination, and with the federal tax credit, your cost drops from $3,500 project down to $613 out of pocket. That will allow you to retrofit your home with brand new insulation and materially reduce your operating costs going forward. And you'll be reducing your carbon footprint because you won't be running your equipment all the time because all your heat is escaping out through your windows.
So once you have done your weatherization, you're ready to think more about your building home systems. So with clean heating and cooling, we're mainly thinking here about heat pumps. So both air source and ground source heat pumps are highly efficient electric technology that allows you to no longer be burning fossil fuels for heating and cooling. The technology for these systems has advanced tremendously over the past 10 years. So there's now cold climate heat pumps. And so in a climate like Lexington that really rarely goes below 0 degrees, these systems alone, even without a backup heat source, are going to keep your home warm and cool. So a lot of benefits to heat pumps beyond the efficiency. They improve your indoor air quality because they're removing the source of your fossil fuel system. They're going to lower your operating costs, especially if your home currently uses electric resistant heating, oil or propane. But even in some cases, compared to natural gas, you'll see lower annual heating costs. Comfort, you'll also hear people say they have a much quieter system. There's dehumidifier within the system, so you have a more comfortable home. If you're interested in a great testimonial, I recommend talking to Janice, who will tell you that her heat pump was life-changing. So please talk to her afterwards. As for climate, they're 4 times as efficient as combustion heating. So even if you're powered off of a grid that isn't 100% renewable energy, you're still seeing dramatic emission reductions. So if you're thinking about installing a heat pump, there's kind of 2 headline items that I want to make sure you know about. The first is Lexington Heat Smart, which is a town program that can help you navigate this transition. And I'll talk a bit more about that on the next slide. And the second is for air source heat pumps. There's a $10,000 rebate from MassSave that you can qualify for if you transition your whole home to heat pumps. And if you're thinking about ground source heat pumps, which is a little bit more of an involved installation and typically higher upfront costs, but are even more efficient, there's a $15,000 rebate. So that's another thing to consider. So Lexington Heat Smart is a town-run program that was launched this January. And through the program, you can connect with a trained advisor who can talk to you about the heat pump technology and can help you just navigate this process, which can be a little bit complicated of talking to different contractors, navigating the incentives and all of that. Through this program, you can also access a list of vetted contractors. So you're not starting from scratch. You have a couple ideas of who you might reach out to. And your advisor can also talk to you about, who have we heard good things from, who you might want to reach out to. This is a program that's supported by Abode, which is a company that's kind of an expert in heat pump technology. So if there's any point where you have a really unique situation that our advisors don't have the information to help you with, you can also, through this program, connect with an expert at Abode who can give you some additional advice. So far, it's been a really successful program. We've had, I think, as of today, it was 115 participants sign up, and over 20 heat pump contracts have been signed from participants who have participated in the program since January. Also, just this last fact here, we're really trying to target especially homeowners who heat with oil or propane, because those are, the worst fossil fuels. And over 50% of our participants have heated with oil. So we're really targeting those who will be the biggest environmental jump, but also financially for those homeowners. There's a ton here, and I'm not going to go over this entire slide, but you will see that there is a lot of incentives available for heat pumps. So there's incentives that can help you lower the cost for both air source and air source and ground source heat pumps. I mentioned already the $10,000 rebates for air source and $15,000 for ground source. There's also federal tax incentives, so you can get 30% off up to $2,000 of the project cost in tax credits. And then we'll talk more about this, but there's financing options available for the Mass Save Heat Loan, where you can get 0% interest up to $50,000 for a heat pump installation. And as I mentioned, you're also going to see operational savings on top of that. So again, this is just kind of a real example of how what this might look like. So thinking about a 2,000 square foot home, the prices are going to depend a lot on the size of your home and what sort of system you're installing, whether you're going with a ducted system or a ductless system. But as an example, if you are looking at a $25,000 initial quote, if you go with a whole home installation, you're going to see $10,000 come off that from the Mass Save rebate. Then alternative energy credits are something you can apply for once your heat pumps have been installed. And it's basically saying to the state, hey, I have this renewable system in my home, and I'd like to get credit for that for the state goals. And so they will pay you around $1,000 for that as well. And then the federal tax credit, $2,000 once you file your taxes. So the total cost post incentives, you're looking now at more like $12,000. And one note here is, unfortunately, all of these are things that come after you have done the installation. So there is typically kind of an upfront cost for what you're going to get back in rebates eventually. But for this total cost, project cost here, you can take out a Mass Save heat loan. So as we said, that's a zero interest loan that you can get up to 7-year term. So if you were looking at $12,000, you'd have a monthly payment of $143 over 7 years. So it makes what would initially be a really large initial investment into monthly payments a bit more manageable to take on.
Okay, so heat pumps, they are the wave of the present, not the wave of the future, as Maggie walked us through. And there's lots of other appliances and infrastructure within our homes that we can electrify. It's not all just about the heating and cooling systems. There's a lot we can do, and you can see some of the examples here. And I just want to take a moment to re-emphasize these two parallel paths that we have to march along at the same time. One, we want to electrify the machines inside our home. But two, we have to make sure that the electricity that we're using is green electricity. So the QR codes down here are pointing you to Lexington's Community Choice Program that Maggie referenced earlier, where you have the opportunity to ensure that the electricity that you're getting from your supplier is sourced from renewable projects. You can also participate in community solar projects to further reinforce the clean nature of your electricity. The next slide, a familiar slide of many different incentives and rebates that are available. And so, like we had on the heat pumps, we probably can't take the time to go through all of these, but really what I want to emphasize to people here is take a look at this list on the left. Think about your own home and the equipment in your own home that has been giving you problems for the past year that you know is getting close to the end of its useful life. Do your research on this equipment now. Look into heat pump, hot water heaters now, so that when that equipment fails, you're not caught off guard and just say, I need a new hot water heater now, I'm just gonna go with what I know. I'm just gonna replace it with what I had before. If you do the research now and are aware of the rebates that are available, it helps you better to cost compare. And so when you have to change out that equipment, or when you choose to do so, you're ready to move to something that's electric.
Okay, now looking at going solar. So in the beginning, we talked about the importance of having renewable electricity, and going solar on your own home is really the most direct way you can ensure that the electricity coming into your home is from a renewable source. And also by installing solar, you can achieve tremendous savings on your electricity and also get monthly payments for getting credit for having renewable energy on your home. And if you're pairing solar with a battery storage system, you can also protect your home from power outages. So if we're seeing more and more storms, if you have a battery backup, your power is not going to go out when your neighbor's does. With the available state and federal tax credits, you can also get up to 45% of the project cost back. And for some, solar on your roof isn't feasible. You might have a shady roof, or you might rent your home. And there are community solar projects, which is an option you can look into, where you essentially buy into a solar project and you get credits back. And often those will offer savings up to about 15% of your electricity costs. So if you're thinking about going solar, here are two kind of initial resources or tools you can check out. Energy Sage is an online marketplace with vetted solar contractors where you can type in your address and get some quotes back for a solar installation. I would also recommend checking out, local solar companies as well, but this is a great starting point of getting a sense of what financial range you're looking at. And then Project Sunroof is just kind of an interesting tool to poke around on. You can also type in your address and it'll give you, based on where your house is located and the sun that's hitting your roof, kind of an initial gut check of the solar potential of your roof. It is likely to overestimate that a little bit based on new fire codes and just kind of how much space you can really put solar on your roof, but it is, again, kind of a good first step to look into and start thinking about this. Okay, so for solar incentives and for battery storage, you can get a mix of tax credits and ongoing payments just for having solar installed. So on the state side, you can get a 15% state tax credit up to $1,000. And then there's a 30% federal tax credit for both solar and battery storage systems. And then through either the SMART program, which is the Solar Massachusetts Renewable Target Program, or through selling renewable energy credits, you can also get ongoing payments for your solar system. So we're going to look at what this looks like in practice. So this is a real example of a Lexington resident who installed solar on their home in 2014. He installed 31 panels for an 8.37 kilowatt system. And on this side, you can see kind of the initial project cost. So the panels themselves cost around $32,000, $33,000. And for his project, he needed to also replace his roof, which isn't going to be the case for everyone, but sometimes is a factor. So that added $4,600 to his total project cost. So he was looking at, a pretty serious upfront investment of $37,000. After the course of his project, after the installation, he got $1,000 back in the state tax credit and $11,000 for the federal tax credit. So that really brought down the total project cost $25,000. But where it really gets good is after you've installed, you really start reaping the benefits of having solar on your roof. So between net metering credits, just the electricity savings that he's offsetting, and these renewable energy credits payments, and performance guarantee payments, that's getting into the weeds here, but basically the solar installer will guarantee a minimum production of your solar system, and if you're not meeting that, they'll pay you the difference. So all of these income streams, essentially. And so this resident is seeing total annual savings or kind of income of $3,355. So with this project cost and the savings, he saw a payback of 7.5 years, and he's already past that point. So now he's bringing in money from this investment. So a really great project to think about. If it's something you can invest in now, you're going to see a lot of financial and environmental benefits going forward.
All right, we'll shift gears a little bit here, go back to a slide we saw at the beginning of the presentation that pointed out how much of our emissions are coming from buildings, but let's not forget about transportation. About a quarter of Lexington's emissions are coming from the transportation sector. And so a similar chart on the bottom where we're highlighting the contribution from transportation that we're trying to make on the path to net zero. I think that we can go to the next slide on this one. I think what comes to mind for most people is electric vehicles. We're going to talk about other options that are also available besides driving, which I think is an important thing to highlight as well. But we're going to focus a lot of the time on electric vehicles because there's a lot of good incentives available here too. And the market for electric vehicles, if you haven't looked and have been exploring it lately, there are vehicles available at all price points. The market has been developed for a while now, so there are used cars available as well. And the federal and state credits are really phenomenal. You can get up to $11,000 off of your vehicle if it qualifies under the various requirements for federal and state tax credits. And in some cases, you can get those rebates off at the point of sale. So you're getting it right off of the MSRP that you're paying for the car. And I think folks are pretty familiar with the other advantages of EVs that you can see listed up here. A couple things I wanted to flag on the bottom here. On the bottom left is a website called PlugShare. We're going to have a QR code for that one on the next slide. So what you get with PlugShare is you plug in a location where you're looking for public charging stations. This is downtown Lexington right here. And those green pins, if they're visible to some of you, are pointing out 4 different public charging stations that are available right here in downtown Lexington. On the left side of that website, it lists the charging costs, information about when they're open, when they operate, and there's a little Google review type section where people make comments that might be relevant to you if you're thinking about going to charge there. So it really reduces that burden on people of wondering when and how am I going to charge my car away from home. This is a photo of a charging station right at Edison Way, just behind downtown Lexington with the bike path there in the background, so right here in Lexington. Okay, and so as I mentioned before, it's not all about converting to electric vehicles. Lexington is, I think, the top town in Massachusetts in terms of EV adoption, but we also drive our vehicles a lot. We're also up there among vehicle miles traveled. So part of getting to net zero is driving our cars less. And there's a lot of great resources available too. If you've never ridden the LexPress, give it a try. If you have kids, they will think it is a ride. My kids love riding on the LexPress. It takes you many places, including right into downtown Lexington. You can just take them to Ranks or wherever. And there's an app and there's a tracker so you can see where the buses are. So you could just step right outside your house if you live close to the route and just flag it down. And then another great resource, Lexington.gov, is the bike, walk, and bus website that really is an encouraging one to utilize to see other forms of transportation besides vehicles. On the bottom, here's PlugShare that I mentioned just a moment ago. Green Energy Consumers Alliance, GECA. This is a really, really great resource. This is probably my favorite QR code of all the QR codes. This website just lists out all the various makes and models of EVs. It shows you which federal and state tax credits they qualify for, It's got all the details you would want, plus testimonials from real-life drivers of these vehicles, and is a really, really excellent resource. So I highly recommend GECA if you're considering EV adoption. Did you want to scan that one? I saw one scan. Let's go back to it for a second. Did you get it?
Go for it.
Okay. All right. We go. Okay, and I mentioned a couple of times the various incentives that are available at the state and federal level. And there's a lot of details. When you're actually going through the process, you do have to go into the nitty-gritty details a little bit to figure out what you're going to get. But let's walk through an actual example here. So example cost for a new EV lease. And the reason I'm highlighting a lease is that right now you can get both the state and federal rebates as a deduction at the point of sale from the cost of the car if you're leasing. If you're buying the car, you have to get it as a rebate down the road when you file. But when you're purchasing the car, when you're leasing the car, you get those right off of the sale price, which also reduces your monthly lease payments because the lease payments are based off of the price you're paying for the car. So this is a Ford Mustang Mach-E, $43,000 MSRP, kind of a midpoint roughly. There's a lot of EVs that are cheaper than that as well. It qualifies for the state rebate, $3,500. It qualifies for half of the federal rebate, so $3,750. And there's a little note there. It's because it does not source at least 40% of its critical minerals in the U.S. So, like I said before, there's a lot of nitty-gritty details that you have to go into. Go to the GECA website. It's really helpful. It does all that work for you. So your total cost post these incentives is materially lower than the upfront cost of the car. And then if you lease the vehicle under standard lease terms, 36 months with zero money down, this monthly lease price is including destination fees and title and registration, gap insurance, all the different things that come with leasing a car. And you can lease an EV vehicle for $444 a month. Now, this is getting to the end of the presentation. This is one of our last slides, but a couple of times we mentioned the Mass Save Heat Loan, and I really want to make sure people are aware of what this program is. So there's participating banks in Lexington. These are the three that are actually located in Lexington. There's a network across Massachusetts of banks that participate. These three banks in particular are based right here in Lexington. For Lexington Mass FCU, you do need to meet certain requirements for who your employer is to qualify for this bank. But for Eastern and for Hanscom Federal Credit Union, you have to open an account with them. Minimum balance at Hanscom is you have to open an account with a $25 minimum balance. And once you're a member of this federal credit union, you can access a Mass Save Heat loan. And the standard loan is up to $25,000. It's based on the cost of the project that you're considering. This is a 0% interest loan with a repayment term of up to 7 years. Maggie gave an example earlier for heat pumps, where the monthly cost was under $150 for your heat pumps. Zero interest, no prepayment penalties if you want to get out of that loan early, and then you can end your relationship with the bank if you don't want to continue with them. And basically, what you do when you're going to get the loan is Mass Save provides you with forms that basically substantiate the project that you're undertaking, and you submit those to the bank along with setting up an account with them. And you can get the loan. You cut that check right over to your contractor, and they take it right. You don't have to front the money first. You just cut that check right over to your contractor. So a really, really great asset. And this heat loan worksheet, so if you scan that QR code, it'll take you to a Google worksheet. It's like an online Excel file where you can just play around with, put in a project cost, put in a sample repayment term, and it'll show you what your monthly payments could be. So feel free to play around with that as well. And then our last slide is a copy of a flyer that we've got up at the front. I really encourage people to take this home with them. This is essentially a summary of everything we talked about today with action items that certainly I think everyone in this room can go home thinking about one action item that you can undertake. And right here, I love this section, which is think about what you've heard today, what was relevant to you, and jot down a couple, what am I going to work on next week? What am I going to research? What am I going to study? And what do I think my next big project is going to be? What are my goals for the next 5 years for undertaking some projects to electrify my home and my transportation and electrify our lives? another little QR code on the bottom there that it takes you to a lexington.gov website that has all this information that we've covered today as well. That's it. Thanks very much for your time today. Definitely reach out to us. We are here to answer questions. Our whole goal is to make this process as frictionless as possible for folks who are considering making some of these changes. Thank you.
Quick question. When we do solar, a lot of times the trees have shadows on our. So one way you can cut the trees to get some solar, but that is not good for the environment. So there is a balance. What is our guidance there here?
Yeah,
Trade-offs is the word that comes to mind.
Yeah, it's certainly a balance. I mean, trees have tremendous benefits in terms of sequestering carbon, providing shade. So we definitely don't, recommend cutting down tons of trees to put up solar. If your house is totally shaded by trees, that could be a great opportunity to look into community solar, which I mentioned, and there's some resources on that back table about it. But yeah, it's one of these tough questions. You got to just kind of find a balance, because both of those are great things for the environment.
A related question. I don't think our house could have solar panels for trees and a variety of others. Is there any effort on the part of a town for, what do they call it, a solar garden or a community solar garden? That is something the town builds and we buy into?
It's definitely something that the town could look into. We're doing a lot of installing solar for buildings, but it would be interesting to kind of look at potential for doing that, like immediate ground-ready projects to do that, but it's definitely something that's of interest.
That's good.
And I'm a member of the Sustainable Lexington Committee. We've got our committee chair, Cindy, right here as well, and Maggie is in all our meetings. And we spend a lot of time talking about how we want to put solar on every roof that we can, municipal roofs, parking lots. So we're exploring all of those opportunities first to put solar in places where it doesn't have a negative environmental impact. You want to utilize those spaces before you consider cutting down trees or using some brownfield space.
Since we're on community solar, I had a question. I always imagined that you could get the same financial benefit with community solar as you could by putting solar on your roof. Just simulate these panels or somewhere else. But you're saying only a 15% savings, and that's nowhere near what you can get by putting it on your own roof. So is there anything that, as the gentleman was saying, where you're literally buying into it and you get your share of the power that's produced there for free after you do the capital outlay?
The projects that I've seen are the 15% usually for like income eligible. There's programs that will go up to like 25%. I'd be interested to hear if there are options that kind of increase those savings. That's what I've seen. I don't know if there's.
I think the point, it's a very good question. The point is the way these solar, community solar projects are put together is you have zero capital outlay.
Okay.
So there's zero risk to you. So they're putting down in the money, they're building the farms, and essentially the credits that that they sell for the energy that's created, you get your cut of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you put no money in at all, and it gets a little more complicated. But you put no money in, and you just get a bit of money back.
Yeah, so in regard to the community solar, community electricity, my understanding is that everybody has it, and if you don't want it, you have to opt out. So you get a lot of stuff in the mail that says, oh, green electricity, and really encouraging people, and if people don't know that they already have it, they buy into this, and it costs more, and it's no better. It might even be worse, but it's no better than what we already have. So we have to thank some of our local people who have made that possible. I think Mark Savine was one of the big people. But for community solar, everybody has it already, and you can up it if you want to get 100% local.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point about kind of these like third parties. Especially if there's a common one that's called Clean Choice, which sounds a
Right.
lot like Community Choice. And often they're offering really low rates initially, and then after an introductory period, the prices will go way up. So always make sure you're looking for something that has the town seal or town communications. The other thing with a third party, if you do get enrolled, then you are no longer kind of like automatically enrolled in the town's program. You would need to take action to enroll back in the town's program. And sometimes there's like cancellation fees if you get into this third party agreement. So be very wary of that. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me or others in the town.
Yeah, I've been involved in a lot of lawsuits related to that, and I would strongly advise people to think twice about signing up with a competitive retail supplier for those reasons. As the town, I mean, what you've said is great. I mean, it's really, clean the grid and electrify everything as possible. Has the town ever thought about asking its suppliers to like figure out like how much of the power that's being sourced is actually deliverable to Lexington and matches in terms of timing and location? Because I buy and sell electricity as a living. Constellation's a client of mine. And I know that for the town of Lexington, I saw like 62% of their RECs are National Wind, which they're basically buying RECs in Oklahoma, which is not deliverable to Lexington, right? And so a lot of our supply is really just that we're actually consuming is coming from the grid, right? Which includes fossil fuels, even though it's 100% green product. So we're not really getting green supply,
Right.
right?
Yeah, so that's where this New England green option comes in, because that is sourcing only from New England. So that's like actually feeding into our grid.
But that's annual matching.
Right,
And so the wind's not blowing all the time, the sun's not shining all the time. So if you match on an annual basis 100%, I've done this modeling, it's 50 to 60% match. So 40 to 50% of our supply would be coming from fossil fuels, even if you do an annual match at 100%.
Does it really matter though? I mean, the carbon dioxide goes into the air wherever, as long as you're taking it out. I mean, what difference does it make whether it's in Oklahoma or
Because
in?
if we add more wind and solar, we still have to balance the system. I need fossil fuels right now to do. I need to displace the fossil fuels.
True.
And so, like, a lot of that, the supply that they're getting is from they're not actually adding even new wind or solar, they're just using existing wind in
The
Oklahoma.
idea is that you're investing, you're saying, I want this, and so you're increasing the value of the electricity that's generated,
Yeah.
and by that, you're investing in creating more jobs and more renewable energy happening locally.
Yeah.
So I think, short of, what Lexington is already doing really well in terms of their own property and trying to sort of help everybody figure out how maybe they can put solar on their own properties.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, definitely.
That's where it's
If
at.
you put solar on your house,
Yeah.
that makes a huge difference. And if we can add more wind and solar, that helps.
Think about the base load or whatever it is that
Yeah,
to maintain the grid is, we don't think about that quite as much maybe,
yeah.
for sure.
So what I'd like to invite people to do now, it looks like we're done with questions, is we've set up.
Actually, sorry, can I say one more thing? And
Please
I
do.
want to call out Maggie and Andy for working on this. I know it was probably not just a bit of an oversight, but if there's anybody, these are wonderful rebates and credits, but there are even more if you meet certain income qualifications, right? And even there are a lot of benefits either for electrifying your home or even for the electricity that you're paying for right now. So if anybody in the room or if you know anybody that lives in Lexington that may qualify for certain, under certain income limits, please reach out to Andy and Maggie so that we can make sure that we help everybody that we can in Lexington. Thank you. Sorry, Ricky.
No, thank you, Cindy, for mentioning that. Fran?
Yeah, just one comment, I guess later in the week, there's a presentation on the new Lexington High School. So, I mean, we could apply all of these things to that particular thing. And I think of this as I drive down Worthing Road. And today I counted probably about 500 or 600 cars that individual kids must drive to school. All, you know, late model or whatever. I'm just wondering, are they teaching the kids anything about this? You know.
Food for thought for every
Yeah.
parent, grandparent, etc.
And our high school students in the room.
That's right, that's right. Charlie?
Ricky, I found this presentation great, so thank you very much. And I know I usually don't get a new car until my old car doesn't go. But now I'm thinking maybe I should switch to an electric. I'm wondering how many people in the room have got an idea from this presentation that they may pursue, maybe a show of hands.
Great, and tell your neighbors and your family and your friends about these ideas. And use all the resources that are available to you, there are lots of them. So there's still more food, so people should eat, but there's also, we have a table about LexCAN where you can find out about lots of other kinds of actions that you can take. But we've set up 3 tables. One says, ask me about solar. One says, ask me about heat pumps and weatherization, because those go hand in hand. You wouldn't put in heat pumps without first weatherizing your home. And the other says, ask me about EVs. So what I'm gonna ask is if you wanna know anything about one of those things, go to that table. And if you know a lot about any of those things, go to that table and start a conversation. Because the best way to learn is from your neighbors, from people who have done it, experienced it, had all the questions that everybody has. The other thing I want to introduce to you is our new part of the LexElectrify is we hope to flood the town with all of these lawn signs. And we have 25 here tonight, and if 25 go tonight, we will get more made. So this gives you the QR code for LexElectrify, but on the other side are the 4 things. And what we're gonna ask you to do is check off what you've done. And so then someone walking down the street, your neighbor walks down the street and says, oh my God, they have heat pumps. I did that with my neighbor. I saw them installing heat pumps. I knocked on the door and I said, who did you use? Do you like them? I walked in, it was middle of summer and it was really hot out. And I walked in the house, it was so delicious. I said, I have to get these. So we're hoping to make this a neighbor to neighbor. So if you have done something in your house, please take a lawn sign. We have pens for you to check off what you've done, and let's try to get this going and really heading around town. So please join us into LexElectrify. Oh yes, one last thing. On October 28th, we are going to have an energy fair at the high school, and we will have vendors who know how to do all of this, where you can ask them questions, you can try to engage them to come to your house to give you an estimate. We'll have an EV showcase, which we have done at our sustainability fairs, and we know we can get lots of Teslas and Bolts and things like that, but if anybody has a Rivian, I passed by one today, or has a F-150 EV truck, or any of those new cars that are coming out, an Ionic, whatever that's called, which is probably going to be a very popular car in this town with all the vans that there are. So we're looking for everybody's EV, and then you can talk to the owner of the car and say, did you take a trip with this car? I don't know if any of you on the Lex Paul Rel list, there was a conversation about, can you rent an EV? Can you charge it? And everybody wrote back, said, yes, I've done this many trips in my EVs. I've rented EVs. It's possible. So October 28th, mark your calendar. You'll be hearing a lot more about it. We have a flyer on the table. And we look forward to seeing you at more events. Thank you.